Ella, please come on up. Thank you.
Well, hello. Thank you for the introduction. I have to say it's quite an honor to be here as an MIT alumni, a recipient of Legatum grants, and just feeling like I'm part of my community among social entrepreneurs and those of you that are trying to scale your ventures as entrepreneurs. So I'm really honored to be keynote, so thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to tell my story. This is me. As Serene says, I'm Ella Peinovich, and I am CEO and co-founder of Soko. And I'll get into what Soko is a little bit later, but I would like to share a little bit of my entrepreneurial journey with you all, really from kind of the roots that I gained here and the strength that I gained here at MIT and how that was effectively brought now to where I am in Kenya. So this is me actually just out of MIT, just having arrived in Kenya, and this would have been in February of 2012. So I've actually effectively been there for about 5 years. And I moved to Kenya to fulfill my role as CEO of Soko. So let me tell you a little bit more of a background as to what brought me to MIT as well. I've had a lot of great influences in my life. I have an artist for a mother who is also an entrepreneur. I have a musician for a father who's a social worker. And they really instilled in me what I would say is a creative spirit, and also leaning towards kind of the imaginative and sort of visionary side. And they also instilled in me very strong Midwestern values of do good and also work hard. So my first taste of development actually came when I was in mission trips in my high school years. I ended up going with my church to rural parts of the United States and actually painting houses, fixing up ramps for accessible handicap individuals, ramps for their homes, and effectively working alongside a number of individuals that I felt like I was part of a community. It was also during my Bachelor's of Architecture at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee that I then continued that pursuit with Habitat for Humanity. And I also pursued work with a community design organization that was working with communities, working hand in hand rather with the communities to develop solutions for their own community. I would say it was actually in those moments and in contrast, kind of the experiences that I've had of this type of service-oriented work, that I did recognize from a relatively early age that charity wasn't the way to go. Actually, in my early experiences kind of painting houses, it was a very pivotal moment for me when I was with 12 other students from my church, and we were just about to paint a house. And of course, every single house was painted the same color, which was a beige brown, because it was a mix of all the sort of available paints that were there. And most of the people we worked with were very needs-based, and it was something that, of course, they really appreciated. But we went to one house, and just as we were setting up, everyone was feeling good. A Jeep Grand Cherokee pulled up, and a woman, very able-bodied, came out with paints that she preferred the color of her house to be. And I remember thinking, I don't know why I'm breaking my back painting this house when I feel like there should be more of kind of a collaborative engagement with the communities that we're working with. And it was from that moment that I realized charity is not sustainable in that way, and therefore saw the opportunity for really building businesses that could effectively reach scale. I think what I've seen through a lot of the social entrepreneurs that I've worked alongside is that solutions really need to be about bringing access for individuals to really take a more dignified approach themselves and allow them to really help themselves. And that can be a really hand-in-hand collaborative process. With Habitat for Humanity, everyone was working on the homes that they were building for themselves. With a lot of the work that I was doing also at MIT, I found that you had a lot more community engagement. So it was really development work that gave me purpose, and it was effectively that itch that I could not scratch. So it was in this sort of passion for purpose-driven work that after a few years of corporate architecture, I actually went to a Master's of Architecture program at MIT. And it was in conversations actually with another Legatum fellow that I learned of the opportunities at MIT to work in development and do that in an international setting. At this time, this was an opportunity that came to me was actually through another organization that was already doing this work. And that was an organization called Sanergy. Anyone who's from the MIT community is likely familiar with Sanergy, but for those of you that are not, it is another social enterprise that's building a franchise of toilets for the informal communities and having also sort of waste management solutions on the backside. I spent every summer, every IAP, traveling to Kenya, and effectively was assisting in what I would say is kind of the coolest toilet I've ever seen. I was one of the architects of that solution. It was a precast, friction-fit solution that was very low cost, easy to service. Even women could service it. And I was really proud of that work. And I'd say I learned a lot. It was a great opportunity for me to also develop my thesis research, which was around localized design manufacturing. Which was effectively developing a methodology for creating localized solutions that were culturally applicable. So Sanergy taught me, one, it was my first exposure to sustainable development based in a business solution. And I think that for me really clicked. That for me said that I can still do good and also have this done in a sustainable framework that can live on kind of beyond myself. It was my first exposure also to social entrepreneurship, to fundraising, business plan development, cap tables. It was also my first time really working abroad and living within an emerging market and context. And it was through this opportunity that effectively I also recognized what I would do differently and what my passions were and effectively what I wanted to do. And at some point there became an opportunity cost. Do I continue doing this really awesome thing with another social enterprise, or do I take the chance to now jump out and pursue my own passion, which is today Soko? I would say, based on sort of the introduction, this is actually the moment where I'd say I became an entrepreneur. As much as I was working within another social enterprise, it was recognizing that I could use my own sort of initiative to really be able to go out there and develop a solution from scratch. So I did decide to leave Sanergy after about a year and a half. I have some of my colleagues here actually from that day. Good to see you guys. And I effectively, I took that moment then to pursue my passion, which is Soko. So it was during all of these years traveling to Kenya, working with Sanergy, that I did make an observation about the incredible cultural value of the artisan community there, making incredible handicrafts, really beautiful craftsmanship, very delicate handwork. And I found myself returning every single week when I was in Kenya to the Maasai markets. So this is a picture of a traditional Maasai market, women coming with their wares, spending 12 to really even 18 hours a day setting up and tearing it down at the end of every day and setting it up again the next day. So I developed a rapport with these artisans and effectively ended up buying suitcases full of jewelry and bringing that back to my parents' family art gallery and selling it at what was actually 10 to 20 times what I paid for it. And at some point, I started to ask myself, why am I the one that's benefiting from this? Why can't the artisans actually be the ones that can benefit the most? How do I remove myself as a middleman in this entire engagement and effectively, similarly, take the lessons I learned from kind of my work with Sanergy and at MIT and build a methodology, build a platform for these artisans to effectively access the international market in a dignified way and effectively empower them to help themselves. So it was, I took a lot of lessons from my experience at MIT to build this methodology and this platform, and eventually built a business model around it that could enable the infrastructure for beneficiaries to help themselves. I recall actually sitting down with my husband, who's also from MIT, hashing out the details of this business in my apartment in Inman Square. We're sitting on my couch and thinking, how could I effectively connect these artisans that are disconnected due to geography, also culturally, digitally, economically, and how can I now connect them with consumers that are in an international market that are willing to pay that 10, 20 times sort of the cost that they're selling in their local market. So I had actually previously worked on a Media Lab project where I was activating the voice of actually not artisans, but a youth group within a church in Kibera slum. And it was actually through text message. I was publishing poetry, actually. Every day I was doing a poetry assignment with this youth group, actually in Kibera. And so I had built this very small kind of art project of taking these text messages, publishing them up onto a Google map, and allowing for there to be sort of this visual map of what was actually poetry about youth unemployment. And it was quite powerful. I really enjoyed it, but it was a real isolated thing. And yet, when I was sort of hashing through what Soko could be, it was that, effectively, was that link. That was the missing link. How do you take mobile-enabled technology that is accessible to the community in Kenya and effectively use that to access a web-based economy and a web-based consumer? So that was effectively the proof of concept for Soko. How do we use artisans' sort of personalized mobile phones to enable them to publish SMS and MMS data to an online web store? It was at this time that I met my co-founders. Catherine Mahugu on the right I met her in Nairobi during one of my trips. She was actually a computer science engineer at the University of Nairobi at the time, and she also had a passion of ICT for development. And we joined forces, developed the first pilot with actually 5 artisans in Kenya from the Maasai market. It was at that time that we also met our third co-founder on the left here, Gwendolyn Floyd, and together we founded Soko. When we founded Soko, I was still actually finishing up my thesis at MIT. And I have to say, it was a real big benefit to having a little bit of overlap in my MIT experience and starting up Soko. The MIT ecosystem really provided me that safe space to sort of test, develop the ideas for Soko. It provided the space, the capital, the training to also support really this fast rate of innovation and also experimentation. And I have to say, MIT really encouraged me to kind of take big leaps without the fear of failure and to actually fail fast. And I would say that this is really the MIT promise, is that we have an incredible atmosphere that supports us to be able to test new ideas and ideas that are bigger than any one of us. I received actually our first seed grant from MIT Legatum Center. It was about $2,500, got me a plane ticket. I think it paid for a few nights in a hotel. And that was actually in the summer of 2010. So it's actually been about 7 years. We were later incubated by the MIT Trust Center, Martin Trust Center, through what is now called the Delta V program. We received a lot of seed funding from the MIT community at large. And this was all before Soko was really more than just an idea and a proof of concept. In total, we were able to chase down about $200,000 in seed grants in order to, within the first 2 years. And we later launched with that capital our first beta website for consumers in October of 2012. The model at the time was often compared to Etsy for Africa, which was giving artisans really control to be able to curate their own web stores directly to consumers. Again, this was that mobile into sort of a web-based platform. This is a really awful photo, but you get a bit of an idea that the artisans actually were taking the pictures themselves on their own mobile phone, and we were publishing that up to the web. At this time, we actually thought technology and access was enough. We thought that was the end of the story. But we did find very quickly that the perceived value of the goods really missed the mark with regard to what consumers were willing to pay for it. And so we quickly realized that it wasn't enough just to connect artisans and connect these markets, but effectively we also had to support marketing, we had to support design, we had to support payments, quality assurance, logistics. We had to build the infrastructure for these artisans to be able to access the international market. So it was at that time that Soko made our first pivot. And we pivoted from what was a pure technology company into what was now a full stack brand and manufacturing organization. I would say there's a lot of stories in that if anyone wants to ask later. This was one of the biggest lessons, though, that I learned, which was that the greatest hurdle in really building a marketplace solution is that you're really solving a problem for both ends of the market. And as I mentioned before, we had artisans and we had consumers on one end. And the problems that they were facing and the needs and really the desires of each side of the market were quite unique. We had artisans on one side that wanted access, they wanted employment opportunities, and they had mobile phones. And on the other side, we had consumers that wanted high quality goods. What we learned actually within this pivot was that consumers, as much as they liked the artisan story and the impact story, it's not why they were buying. Consumers do not buy because of an ethical purchase decision. It might be why they pay a little bit more. It might be why they come back to you because they are loyal to you, because they have a sense of purpose in that purchase. But ultimately, consumers want high-quality product that makes them feel good, look good, and fits their taste and their price point. It was when we discovered this, and with this lesson in mind around high quality, we also received our first funding at that time as well. And we launched, at that time, the Soko brand. So this was, once we had taken really control of the narrative to our consumers and sort of this aspirational brand, that things actually started to really click for us. Within a year, we began selling wholesale to trade shows, selling to over 50 boutiques, including Anthropology. We also had an order by the end of the year with Nordstrom's, which is our biggest order to date. That was when we thought we'd made it big. I actually remember very, very vividly my sister-in-law Facebook posting and linking to me that she had seen my brand and my product in Nordstrom's without any prompting. She'd bought a set and she was telling the world that she was so proud of her sister-in-law for having her products actually in Nordstrom's. And that for me was a big moment because I felt like it was an organic sort of consumer that had reached my inner circle of people that without me sort of prompting friends and family, they'd found our product. And I think that was a really big sort of validation moment. Little did she know that we had actually 2 weeks prior recalled all of the same product because we had a plating issue and we had to reproduce it all and replate it within a matter of 2 weeks and get it back on the shelves, or rather it had never gotten to the shelves. But there's always these little moments where you work super hard and they really pay off. And yeah, so it was really at this point, we were about 3 years into the organization that we started to see the company really take off. And where we are today, to date we have opened up our own retail outlet. We've launched leather goods about a year ago. We're also featured in about 500 boutiques globally. We've generated about $3 million in sales. We've raised about $3 million as well within venture capital-backed investments. And yet, again, my pride is the fact that we have gone from beyond supporting the 5 initial artisans within our pilot to now supporting 2,100 artisans within the Kenyan, Ethiopian, and Ugandan community, and contributing actually over $1 million in revenue to that artisan community to date. So we have also grown our team in the past 3 years from what was 5 people in a technology company to now over 70 people, 65, actually now 70. We just hired a few people earlier this year within kind of this full stack manufacturing brand. And today we're selling also online to tens of thousands of customers actually globally in over 45 countries globally. So that's where we're kind of at today. You can find us in Nordstrom's if you go online. We just got in stores last week again with the next order. So where are we today? And where is Soko really going? Even with all these pivots, I have to say I'm very proud of the fact that Soko has never wavered in our mission. We continue to catalyze global supply chain innovation with the aim of changing the fashion industry for good. Soko is leveraging our technology-enabled distributed manufacturing model to provide access for artisans to reach new markets, while also providing consumers with a much more ethical alternative to fast fashion without sacrificing on their cost and their aesthetics. So we are reinventing, effectively, the broken standards of production within this fashion industry. And in this way, we're not only improving the lives of thousands of artisans, but we are also changing the way that consumers shop. So this is really the Soko story now. Goes beyond my own personal journey as much as it is mine. It's not my story, I would say. It's more Veronica's. We were inspired by artisans like Veronica, who produce incredibly high-value goods, yet their sales are really limited to the inconsistent local marketplace. She sells 7 days a week and earns very little for her wages, for her take-home. And this actually really diminishes her ability to help herself and her family out of poverty. Most artisans are like Veronica. They're needs-based micro-entrepreneurs with very small businesses, often living on less than $2 a day. And Veronica's not alone. This is a global need and a global opportunity. The artisan industry is the second largest employer in the developing world and also the most disenfranchised. It is accounting for 60% of creative goods exported globally. And these offline producers cannot access online consumer demand as they are part of the 70% of the globe that is without digital access. So as we ask ourselves, what if fashion and consumerism can work for the poor in the planet rather than against it? This is where we believe the Soko solution fits in. Soko is enabling human capital through innovative technology. Unlike manufacturing automation, which aims to automate humans out of the supply chain, Soko believes that technology can be used to enable human capital, to empower them to be more inclusive and productive members of society. So we started out really by recognizing that there was 4 main barriers to having these artisans access these international markets. First, they didn't know what to make in order to cater to international taste and trends. This goes back to the design, the curation of the products, and the perceived value of the products that I mentioned before. Secondly, they didn't know how to make them to plug into standardized production processes, quality, consistency. Third, they could not receive payments or actually access working capital. And lastly, they didn't have access to the markets to be able to market their goods. However, what they did have is a mobile phone. Soko is transforming the personal mobile phone into a business tool. And in this way, our innovative technology is effectively crowdsourcing marginalized production talent. Artisans can receive purchase orders, manage their inventory, track their goods, and also get paid all via their personal mobile phone. By using the technology already in their hands, Soko is able to reimagine the centralized model of production and actually open up what we call a virtual factory to allow for us to have a decentralized coordination of over 2,100 artisans, independent artisans, let me say, in a demand-responsive global manufacturing model. Our proprietary mobile-to-web technology then matches this artisan capacity with real-time global demand, coordinating production, inventory, and ensuring that we can maintain a very light operation and very low-cost overhead. Soko's production model makes ethical production possible while providing the pricing, the quality, and the volumes to remain competitive in the international fashion market. Retail buyers have really been jumping at the opportunity, similar to Nordstrom's, to be able to buy ethical fashion, because what we've been able to do is bring them a product that they love, but does not sacrifice their values, while also providing them a product that's low cost and also beautiful. We are expanding our brand right now. We're looking into, again, expanding into home goods in Uganda, beyond the leather goods and the jewelry that we have now. And our supply chain is just a fraction of the cost of a centralized model due to the technology engagement that we have, resulting in lower prices to consumers and also higher earnings to our artisans. So we have barely scratched the surface of the impact that we could make with this model. It's a very scalable solution. Veronica, who I spoke of earlier, has actually a really incredible journey. She is a young woman and has been able to actually effectively create her own workshop, employing elders and even men from her community. She's gone from just selling a few products in the Maasai market to now selling in over a few hundred products now into some of the most beautiful boutiques in New York, Paris, and San Francisco. And to be clear, this is not just Veronica. We are changing the lives in a similar way of the over 2,100 artisans that are in our platform, increasing their incomes by a factor of 5 on average, and again, generating over $1 million in revenue to the artisan community to date. Through Soko, artisans are lifting themselves out of poverty, able to participate and compete in the international fashion market. I'd like to show you a video, if we can bring that up, that really illustrates this for you in a better way than I can describe it.
Artisan craft industry is the second largest employer in the developing world, with a majority of production happening in small, informal workshops. Global artisans like Veronica, due to limited market access and infrastructure, remain trapped in their local economies, unable to access international demand for their goods. Soko is innovating the global supply chain to reinvent the broken standards of production, changing the way consumers purchase, retailers source, and artisans produce. In this way, Soko is enabling artisan communities in the developing world to not only participate, but compete in the global fashion market. We have done this by transforming the personal mobile phone into a business tool, by using the technology already in their hands to network distributed producers into an efficient and powerful production force we like to call a virtual factory. This virtual factory uses mobile-to-web technology to coordinate over 1,300 independent artisans into a demand-responsive manufacturing model. Artisans can receive purchase orders, manage delivery and inventory, and get paid directly, all via their mobile phone. Our cloud-based system matches artisan capacity with real-time global demand, ensuring the highest quality product, transforming the fashion industry for good. Soko's production model makes ethical production possible, providing the quality, pricing, and volumes necessary to compete on the mainstream consumer market. This model is so efficient that Soko is able to reduce waste, timelines, and costs, resulting in lower prices to customers and higher artisan earnings, leading to an increase in income by a factor of 5 and contributing nearly $1 million in revenue to the artisan community to date. Through Soko, artisans like Veronica are lifting themselves out of poverty. With Soko, consumers can shop consciously by default, never having to make sacrifices in style or affordability. Soko currently sells to over 400 international retailers, including Nordstrom, Fossil, and Anthropologie, and directly to tens of thousands of online customers in over 35 countries. At Soko, we believe that for something to be beautiful, the system that created it must also be beautiful. We are committed to inventing a more inclusive, productive, and sustainable future for all.
Thank you. I'm not done yet. Soko, I would say, is largely powered by our amazing team, which you saw featured in the video. We've also shared and had a lot of support from other passionate persons who believe in for-purpose and for-profit businesses. So since the days of incubation in MIT, the company has gained a lot of global exposure. We've sold and had developed custom products for the United Nations, where 20% of the proceeds went back to supporting to end violence against women. And today we are a venture-backed organization, as I mentioned before, with over $3 million in institutional investment from impact investors as well as venture-backed investors alike. So Soko is really looking into kind of the next generation of our impact. As we continue to sort of scale our technology solution and the demand for our products, we are continuing to grow as a lifestyle brand and also an ethical manufacturing platform. We are now sourcing beyond jewelry in East Africa into leather goods and home goods across East Africa, and we are continuing to scale our part of the $200 billion fashion market. Soko has more than doubled every single year for the last 3 years since we launched our wholesale offering. And we aim to actually grow our impact over 25,000 artisans and 100,000 dependents within the next 5 years. We aim to do this through launching actually a private label offering and manufacturing platform where other brands and designers can leverage our incredible distributed manufacturing solution. We have little to no, with little to no added capacity. Today, with right size manufacturing and responsive manufacturing, we are able to produce up to $15 million in revenue with our current community. So I am going to end here. I want to thank everyone here who's part of this MIT community. I have to say that MIT has really provided me an incredible platform and access to really test the market on the ground, also be within the community in Kenya and also in the market here. And I have to say that I believe that really myself being in Kenya is just another way of kind of giving back to all of you in the greater community that I feel a part of. That's given me so much, and I hope to continue to do my work on the ground in Kenya and scale Soko as much as I can. And I have to say what I'm proud of most is really the change that I've been able to see when I'm there in Kenya. Soko, again, is not my story. As much as I've given you my entrepreneurial journey today, I have to say it is shared by a lot of people that go beyond myself, and the impact on the lives of the artisan community and the team that we work with every day, I think, is really in itself a transformation, and really proves what can be done when social entrepreneurship is taken at full advantage to do good and also do well. And I hope that we can all make incredible solutions, and I hope you've learned something from what I'm doing to make more inclusive and productive societies. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.